We are joined now by a senior analyst for the ACLJ for the Sekulow broadcast, Tulsi Gabbard, both in military and political affairs today, a little bit of mix of the political affairs. And Tulsi, I want to go right to you. Your reaction to the latest charges, this second indictment filed against Donald Trump by special counsel Jack Smith, this time involving mostly what Donald Trump said, what we talk about is speech and the idea of criminalizing political speech.
Yeah, Jordan, this is yet another example of how far President Joe Biden's politicized Department of Justice is willing to go to try to destroy his main political opponent as a presidential election is going on. This foundational purpose of what the Biden administration is doing is really the thing that should be most concerning to everyone. As we can see all of these indictments, count after count after count, being thrown at former President Donald Trump, is clearly an effort to divert his focus away from the campaign and towards fighting on multiple fronts in these lawsuits, and to completely drain him and his campaign of resources so that they can't focus on actually campaigning and trying to win this election. The founders envisioned that our country would be a country of laws, not of men. And what we're seeing here, most concerning as it relates to the First Amendment, but you take all of these different attacks and indictments in whole, what we're seeing is a politicized Department of Justice that has disqualified itself from being able to fulfill the awesome responsibility that they're entrusted with, because they are using it, first of all, to go after their political opponents, namely Donald Trump and his supporters, and also using the Department of Justice to protect the Democrat elite, namely President Joe Biden and by extension, Hunter Biden. So we're seeing how this politicized Department of Justice is being used to achieve both of those purposes, both of which harm the American people's interests, the interests of our country and our democracy.
Things that was interesting to me is a couple of points. One is, and one of the allegations in the indictment is that the Department of Justice was attempted to be used as a vehicle to propagate what President Trump was saying. But in reality, that's exactly what the Department of Justice is doing in this case. And what's so concerning, we just had my friend and colleague Alan Dershowitz on, and we both talked about the two things that are so dangerous in this indictment. I have spent my career defending free speech, and I have defended groups that I totally disagree with. I mean, that's the beauty of liberty. I have represented groups from the American Civil Liberties Union in cases to a Hare Krishna religious group, to the National Democratic Policy Committee, to evangelical groups, to free speech access, to pro-lifers. That's what free speech is. But they have criminalized free speech, and then they want to criminalize the lawyers defending the free speech, even if it's speech you disagree with. And I just find this indictment to be striking at the heart of a constitutional republic, and that is free discourse. And I know in your military career, you spent your life defending our freedoms. But in your political career, this is dangerous for politicians.
There's no question about that, Jay. As you were playing some of those news articles leading up to our conversation here, they're talking about people accusing Donald Trump of knowingly lying to the American people. If that's their accusation, does this mean they're now going to go and try to criminally prosecute every single person who runs for office who knowingly doesn't tell the truth? It goes directly to what you talked about is free speech, this open marketplace of ideas, and has an incredibly powerful chilling effect on that public discourse and making it so that people are thinking twice before they express their views or their opinions, and putting us in a position where we have the nanny state, big government, big brother policing that very free speech that our Constitution protects.
It seems to me too, Tulsi, that this should not be just Republicans standing up and saying this is an attack on free speech. It should be everyone saying, you know what? I should be able to have a view, and it might be a view that's outside the norm, because a lot of times views that might be outside the norm today become views that are very much the norm, years from now, and even sometimes even more quicker than that. So the idea that, the Hunter Biden laptop is false, and now we know it's real, but yet at the time, if you said it was real, you were taken off social media. Your First Amendment rights were violated. You may not have been criminally prosecuted, but it brings up the question, should those FBI agents have been criminally prosecuted because they knew the laptop was real the day they got it, and yet they told social media companies it was a fake Russian asset. It puts us in a place we shouldn't be in our country. Free speech means free speech. It doesn't matter who's speaking.
That's right, Jordan. And you bring up really an important point there about how this is not something that's limited to partisan politics, because it sets such a dangerous precedent for what happens when, the winds of power shift to the other party. The Democrats who are silent today may be happy or pleased with what's going on. Well, what happens when the tables are turned and now there's a new norm that's in place where in the United States of America, the Department of Justice is now used to go after political opponents. If a party that they are not happy with is in power, they should be very concerned about that eventuality right now, because the tables could turn very quickly and they could see their speech that they approve of or the politicians that they like being prosecuted in much the same way.
We're in the middle of we just started actually a Life and Liberty drive at the ACLJ for the month of August. And I'm thinking, we're representing the FBI whistleblower who, said that the FBI and the federal government are basically crushing him and his family. And they suspended his security clearance, and then they suspend him without pay, and they can't take another job while they're going through this process. Then the administrative law judge, Tulsi, says, well, I can't review your security clearance, so you don't get redress in the courts. Now we're taking it to the court. It goes right to the Federal Court of Appeals, which we're doing. But I saw this when you ran for president. As your star was rising in that Democratic debate, and you were doing so well in those, all of a sudden it was like this machine just put you in the sights. And I feel like the same things happened to you. It happened to Donald Trump. It happened to anybody that's speaking out maybe outside the norm of the establishment.
Yeah, there's no question about it. And it is a tried and true playbook that you've seen, I've seen, we've seen happen over and over again, used against people, regardless of political party, who dare to challenge whatever their mainstream narrative is of the moment, who dare to challenge their authority is really what it comes down to. And you're right. I lived through it, was in the belly of the beast as they were throwing everything possible at me to try to destroy my character, smear me, discredit me, silence and cancel me, the whole thing. They're doing this to Donald Trump. They're doing it now to RFK Jr. We saw in the hearing that he testified at in Congress on the hearing that was specifically speaking about the weaponization of the federal government and its attempts to censor voices, American people. And the Democrat elite in that committee tried to censor Bobby Kennedy Jr. from speaking in that very committee about censorship. So the hypocrisy and the irony is glaring. They're not even trying to cloak it in anything. And it's something that we need to be very concerned about and not allow their proclamations that they are doing this in the name of protecting democracy and this is what's best for the country and the American people. We can't believe that, because that's not what it is. It's about their power and protecting it at all costs.
We appreciate your insight. We appreciate you being part of our team on Sekulow. Join the ACLJ in the fight to keep America free.